close the door. But yeah, we can get started. Let's see. Committee Member Cooper.
Here.
Committee Member Larson.
Here.
Committee Member Sear is not able to come tonight. Committee Member or Vice Chair Smithies.
Here.
Committee Member Urhammer is absent, and Committee Member Way hopefully is on his way, and Chair Peterson.
Here. Okay. So approval of the minutes. I looked through it a bit. Does anybody have any comments? I have a few. If you might have anything to add.
Nope.
On, I think it was, yeah, on North Lennox's presentation, I think there was some, I just wanted to record that gas water heating was a good focus for fuel switching. And then also there was a mention that in the surveys he's done, he saw a solar system penetration about 10%. So that, I think that's another area where there's opportunity to push for more. And then on 6-3, in addition to doing electrical vehicles, there's also alternatives to driving is something we want to also promote.
Which number was that?
6.2 under the CAP 2.0 subcommittee, focus on reducing community-wide emissions through promoting adoption of EV vehicles and technology and home electrification. But I would say after EV vehicles and technology, and also alternatives to driving, period. Kind of active transportation and mass transit. And I have something else here. I was looking through, Max had made a comment, I think it was during their discussion of their goals, that he was interested in having a higher priority on mitigation versus adaptation in sort of the emphasis of the CAP. So I had jotted that down.
Sorry, which number? Which?
6.2.
Oh, still 6.2.
It was sort of a
okay.
closing comment that he made.
He wanted to focus on which?
Well, he was saying it seems like the
Adaptation.
priority of the CAP 2.0 should be still on mitigation, although there is an adaptation portion. So I think he was just, I think what brought that forward was the recent reports, of the state of climate change.
There wasn't anything specific that came to my mind when I read it, but it seemed like the discussions weren't captured in here as much as in past minutes, that there were more comments, is what I recall, or corrections.
Well, they are action minutes, so we give you a little summary of what was discussed, but we can review and see if there's more detail.
Yeah, it's sort of, in looking through the notes before, what I've noticed is we have pretty long discussions sometimes, and all comments aren't really noted in the
Yeah, that's not
it's
that's
more
my
summary, right?
Well, yeah, actually, action minutes. We really only need to record any action that you
If
take.
there's any action, yeah.
But usually we try to do a little summary of any outcome of the discussion, like staff will report back on.
So I think
et cetera.
what's good to look at this, since it isn't a record of everything said here. I mean, I guess we can always go back.
We have these meetings are recorded, yeah.
Right, but if there's, what I usually try to do is just hit something that I think was an important point, just so people remember that. Didn't I say something at some point? So anyway, I'm a little biased towards that. I've spoken myself on the priority of mitigation over adaptation. But anyway, that was all
Sure.
I had.
Yeah, we can go back through and see if we can capture anything else.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments on minutes? Everyone okay with it? Well, I move that we accept the minutes as submitted. Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so that passes
You
unanimously.
approved it as corrected?
As
with
corrected.
With
And
minor
then-
edits?
Yeah, with the minor edits made. Okay, no public present. So let's move on to 4-1, under announcements, upcoming sustainable.
So there's an announcement that I sent an email a couple hours ago. It's not on the agenda as an announcement, but I think it's important for the committee to know. At the city council meeting the other night, there was a discussion about commissions and committees, and this was put on by the city manager as an opportunity for the council to give some direction. They do this every few years, and what came out of that wasn't what I think Nicole was expecting, is they would give some direction and some general direction, but they took a specific action related to the sustainability committee, and it was related to updating the name of the committee to be the Climate Action Plan Technical Advisory Committee, and to focus what you work on onto those two primary topics that you just discussed: reducing greenhouse gases and adapting to climate change. This wasn't a formal action, but they did ask for the city staff to prepare a resolution for their next meeting on this. As a practical matter, we don't see this as a major change for what you do, and probably if it's noticeable, the main impact, I think, on how we prepare or present information to you in your meetings would be that we might not bring some other environmental related or perhaps some of the resilience related items to you because they may not be directly related to those two items of reducing greenhouse gases and adapting to climate change. The timing of these things are always kind of tricky, and there were members of other committees that were concerned about this was a little bit of a surprise. The challenge for the council and for the city manager is there's this very narrow window of time between at the end of one term and the beginning of the new term, and if there would have been more substantial changes to this committee or other committees, that decision would need to be made right away, so before people start applying, submitting their application to be a member of a particular committee. So I sent you by email a summary in the email, and then attached the staff report for you, and we'll when the city council agenda packet becomes public next Wednesday, usually on Wednesdays, we'll make sure that you're aware of.
Right. So I was kind of typing what's happened. So the idea is the sustainability committee will be changed to what was that again? It was quite a
I know,
mouthful.
I have to look at it. And we may want to play around with this a little bit at the staff level. It doesn't roll off the tongue. It's the Climate Action Plan Technical Advisory Committee.
And I'm kind of curious. This was proposed by the city manager?
It was, she prepared a report on almost all of the commissions and committees.
A report?
To the city council on the structure and appointment process for all, and focus of all the city commissions and committees.
I don't understand why the city manager would come up with a whole change of what this committee's goal is. Why would they do that?
I think she was getting some feedback from some individual council members that they wanted to have a discussion about it.
Oh, okay, so this probably came from council members.
And it's not unusual. It is the one time every 2 years where we can do this.
Was there a report from staff to the city manager making a recommendation?
No,
Sustainability.
this came from the city manager's office.
So it's a climate action plan. Climate action plan and
Technical Advisory Committee. CAP-TAC. If you need an acronym.
Okay. So it sounds like they want a more specific, which is something I've kind of been arguing around too. They want a real specific focus on this for this committee.
Right, which
Sounds
is
like
kind
that's
of
what
what you've
they're
been doing anyhow. So that's why our feeling about it is, other than a name change, it may not really change how you.
What was the reason for changing?
I don't know.
So you forward us information. Does it have background on what's driving this and everything? I mean, it might be interesting to.
The report says to modernize the purpose of the committee to focus on the focus on the two key priorities. I guess it's committee charge, reducing greenhouse gases and adapting to climate change. I think we can pull up the report, but it said something about modernize and kind of narrow the focus. Which I think is interesting because the Sustainability Committee has talked over the years about what your purpose should be. The purpose right now is very broad, so council thought having a very clear focus would be helpful.
Right. It's kind of interesting to add in technical advisory committee. All committees are sort of advisory. It's interesting that that's sort of put in there. But so is this the time to discuss this? I appreciate this is kind of coming right now. It's sustainability events, so it sounds like this should be a whole. This is kind of an announcement, and maybe we should make it. It's certainly not on the current agenda.
Right.
Should we agendize it as a future topic? It's kind of there anyway.
I think we certainly can. Although I think that if you have. Either if you like the idea or if you don't like, have strong feelings about it one way or the other, you may want to communicate to the council directly before their next meeting.
Well, or certainly talk with this, maybe have a meeting with the city manager and see what's the, since it came via the city manager, would that be appropriate to sit down with them and say, well, what's the point here, or what's the driver behind this, or should we talk to our city council appointees, or?
I think probably your city council members would be.
Okay. I'd like to suggest that all of us talk to our respective, you don't have one, so you don't need to worry, you're off the hook. But I think it would be good to chat with our appointee, and we can't then meet and all discuss because violate the Brown Act. Thing that kind of worries me a little bit was we were headed towards having this very public meeting at our next meeting in January that was going to be all come to the Sustainability Committee to, talk about the cap and have public input, et cetera, et cetera. Are we? It seems like, well, now we're calling it something different, and we better get all our ducks lined up and make sure. I mean, that has to do with the cap, so I think it's in keeping with what is being suggested here. I feel like we should wait till this comes direct from the city council. I mean, I appreciate getting a heads up. But city council hasn't made this decision. They're going to, so probably, can we put this on agenda for February?
We can. I'm not sure if it's a discussion in February, but I think if you want to talk about how to manage the workshop conversation, we should do that later on.
Yeah,
on the agenda.
let's definitely do that later. It's just right now, this is a lot for us. We obviously didn't read what you sent us. I haven't. So it's a bit to think about, and there's probably some discussion involved. It's not on our current agenda. I'm going to suggest it maybe go on the next agenda in January, maybe, but it doesn't seem appropriate to do that there if it's a public meeting, or we put it till February.
I disagree with it.
Okay, you.
It sounds like that council needs to act on this before the applications. So it has to be soon because people are going to be.
Right. Well, it's like we should have done it at the last meeting.
So waiting till January.
I'm just saying it's not on the
February,
agenda,
it's
so
gonna be a done deal.
yeah, but it's not on the agenda, so legally we can't talk about it.
Well, it'll be too late to talk about it. So what's the timeline for this going before council?
As my understanding, our task is to prepare the resolution by the end of this week. What happens with that, I'm not sure. We're not reading that much into this other than kind of adjusting to a new name. I don't get the sense that there's any hidden agenda with it.
That's the reason why council passed it, I think, was because it was straightforward, right? That was my sense, was that they didn't think it was a big change.
There's board or commission or committee to say, we'd like you to focus on this, then changing the name and limiting the scope of the work of a committee as a, you know, as a change like that.
Mhm.
So there's a reason behind that I think would be good if we knew. Does that mean that the city manager believes that the sustainability committee is focusing on too broad issues, or?
I
I think it's more talking to your council members.
Yeah, I think we need to, so, I mean, I think the reason we're acting is it's almost as if you went to the Social Justice Committee and said, no, you're gonna become the Sanctuary City, Technical Advisory Committee now, and it's kinda like, we have sort of a broader thing here. So anyway, I think we all have questions about that. I think the best way to approach it is we should look at what you sent us. We should formulate our questions and within the next, I'd say week, I mean, you've got to can we individually get our issues back to you or just discuss them out with the council member?
That's not the direction. We're
Yeah.
being directed to write up how this is gonna change.
Well, then it'll go to council and we can always go and speak at council.
Right.
So I think it's a little awkward how this is happening. I think I know what's I have a sense of sort of what the driver is behind it and from my own point of view, but I'd sure like to hear it from other people,
Right.
and understand really what's being said here, or what the intent is. So anyway, if we talk to our council people, how can we share that information so we're all brought up to speed about it? Is that something we could get to you and then you would distribute it out to everyone?
To some degree,
Or we just put it on the next agenda and we
Or-
just deal with it in the next
I
agenda?
think just put it on the next agenda in your,
So why don't, so does anybody else have any thoughts on this? That I think I think it's better if I don't see us gaining anything by discussing this here right now because it's a non-agenda item. We're sort of talking about under upcoming sustainability events, which it certainly isn't. So I think we need to talk to our appointees to get clarification on this proposed change. The city managers come up due to direction from city council members. And let's put it as an agenda item for next time under, I would just, it'll be a discussion and possible action, which is, mission under new, you guys can think of, I mean, just, what do we, approach forward under new title as boom, I guess.
Depending on if the title is approved.
Yeah, or maybe we just call it Sustainability Committee name change, make it very broad.
I mean, it could be part of a work plan discussion too.
which is probably a much more important thing.
Yeah, because we're coming up
Yeah.
to the end of the year,
'Cause
we
I-
gotta do that.
I don't know. For us, it doesn't actually seem like it changes anything because that's what you've been working on anyway.
Well,
So
that's if you completely ignore that there's a point to, well, anyway.
Talk about it, yeah.
So let's, can we do that and have it as an agenda item? I trust you to put it in the right place and call it the right thing. But right now, I encourage everyone to talk to their council appointee. First, I think it would be good to check in to make sure you've reapplied and said I'm interested in serving again, and then to discuss drivers behind this and what city council sees as really the goal that they're trying to get out of what was the sustainability committee by changing it to, and let me make sure I have this right, Climate Action Plan Technical Advisory Committee. Okay. Certainly was very focused. I wish Max was here, he might be delighted. We can turn everything over to him. Okay, so, sorry, any,
Really quick to mention, not that this is necessarily the right thing to do, but if one of us isn't in the room, we technically don't have a quorum, correct?
Right.
So after the meeting, if, for example, I want to step out because I can't meet with my city council member and you want to all speak about it, that would be allowed under the Brown Act.
It would be allowed. I think it's always better to be a little bit more
Yeah, of
transparent
course.
about it. I'm not sure I can say anything more than what I've already told you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you've made us aware, and you've recommended that we talk to our council people that appointed us if we had more questions about it. But this is a direction that the council has thought enough about instigating that they've asked the city manager to direct you to do this.
And you may get different answers. I think the city manager
You're
was hearing
right.
different things from different council members, so she said, okay, I guess I need to put this on the agenda.
Yeah, okay.
And she,
Sounded like they didn't have a
there was
motion.
certainly direction. I'm not sure if there was a motion. I'm not recalling if there was a motion, but there wasn't a resolution for them to vote on, but there was certainly clear direction.
Would that be in their minutes? Is that
Yeah.
posted?
Oh, yeah.
No?
Yeah.
And this was just,
All those meetings are videotaped too.
and that was, they met yesterday, or when was it?
Monday.
Monday. Okay, well, that certainly wasn't on the timetable, but anyway, okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Any other upcoming sustainability events?
Right, sorry, that was before upcoming sustainability events. Now, for one, there is a holiday toy swap this Sunday. So you can reduce your holiday footprint by swapping out old toys for new to you toys for holiday gifts or to clean out your toy drawer. So that's exciting. I think it's at the community center. It's on our website. And then it's in the morning time on Sunday. Get ready for winter storms with sandbag filling assistance days. We had one last weekend and then one scheduled for January 5th. And next year's event calendar has not been populated yet, so that's all I have for you. But next year I'm sure we'll have lots of events on the calendar.
And this is sort of a slow time for Parks and Recs. They just went through their high season, so they're not scheduling any major events and things happening there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm going to try to do a better job of sort of scanning things and finding out what's going on. And ACAC doesn't have anything planned, I don't think. I haven't heard anything.
We can get to this, maybe we'll get to this later, but our Community Climate Solutions webpage will populate events too, so eventually we'll have
okay.
sustainability related all in one place. Update on electric vehicle charging stations. The project has been delayed because of some issues with the contractor, but the Air District has granted us an extension to our grant, and we're meeting with Public Works next week to discuss the new project timeline. So hopefully we'll have an update for you next meeting.
Blair, I know you probably said this earlier, but is there like something written on the electric vehicle charging stations? Is there a proposal or document or something that we could make ourselves
We
informed on what that is?
did have something that went to council, but I think it's pretty minimal. But I can dig it up. It's really just it's a list of the 4 locations with the charging stations and maybe the specs for the stations. But I can send that to you.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. Just send it out to all of us, so we're kind of appraised in that. But it was 4 or 5 stations?
It's 4 stations for the grant, 5 stations total. We have 1 station that's not funded by the grant because it's
Yeah,
not
okay.
it won't be publicly accessible.
And just to reiterate, the issues with our contractor, they're not able to perform right now for legitimate reasons, and so we don't necessarily want to terminate the contract. It's just giving them a chance to deal with their issues, and then they'll execute the project.
And then as far as any future additional rollout of charge stations anywhere, is there anything in the works, or is this something that, again, I think this was something Max's group was going to try to promote, maybe along with shift to EV, or is there any talk about that?
Well, we've been trying to get one in the ground for years, so we're going slowly, one thing at a time. But we've talked with Lizzie about doing some analysis about kind of more of an EV readiness plan and looking at, or an EV action plan for the city, and looking at where we could implement electric vehicles on
That-
private property as well.
And that was a discussion with who?
Lizzie?
Oh, you two. So that's within your group, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm wondering if there's a way to bring in like third parties that are interested in partnering with the city and putting pay to use stations. And aren't there a couple up? I thought there were some in a lot behind
Little Star.
Little Star.
PG&E has a program where you have to at least have 10 stations. So it's not right for us, but certainly if there are large employers like USDA, for instance, that are interested, that would be a good fit.
Okay, well, yeah, all right. Okay, so right now there's not a huge amount going on, but you will be looking and seeing if there are some options. Okay. Anything more on that? Any other questions? Public comment? No. Let's move on to the next.
East Bay Community Energy Update. It's launched to all residential and commercial customers. I only got one angry phone call, so that's good.
That actually is very good.
Yeah, it's really good. He was really angry. Well, there have been a lot of letters and postcards in the mail, both from EBCE and the city. Unfortunately, they chose to launch during our busy election season. So it may be that a lot of those things got tucked into other election mail. But I know as an Alameda County resident that I did receive correspondence from EBCE. So that's kind of how people know. And then on their bill,
Right.
I don't know what you see on your bill, actually. I didn't look at my bill.
I,
This week it was from PG.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be very different.
So, right, so
It's-
a lot of people
They might not know.
not.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
well, that might be another, there might be more calls coming in once people open their bills, physically look and see that there's some other entity being listed on the PG&E bill, but yeah, again, we were sort of hoping to get more of a word out to keep people happy and informed, and I don't think we ever really had it. I mean, other than at the Solano Stroll, I think we had information available that this was happening, but again, most of the people at Solano Stroll probably from Albany, so well, okay. I mean, so far so good.
Yeah, and we met with EBCE staff. We actually met with the CEO this morning. City staff did to discuss kind of our working relationship and particularly come up with some ways to better communicate, so that they better communicate with city staff. So we're starting monthly meetings with them that we think will help with our working relationship and talk more about their local development business plan. Their expected revenues are going to be much lower than they had originally anticipated, which they're prepared for, sort of a worst case scenario where the exit fee is now much higher based on the CPUC decision back in October. And they'll still come out ahead, and the rates are still going to stay the same as PG&E's, but it means that they have less wiggle room and less revenue to focus on some of those local development projects, solar panels in our cities, et cetera. So this first year, they may be doing smaller projects than originally anticipated, but the hope is over time they'll continue to be able to help on that end as well.
Yeah, they have an outreach sort of public education group. I mean, I was contacting you, go through a little seminar, and then they try to arrange things. It would, I finally found the emails for those that are going to my junk folder, but it seems like a lot of it's focused on bigger cities like San Leandro and Hayward, and other cities are doing things. Is that something Albany could outreach to them and try to put one on in Albany?
We've tried.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, when they've had open seats, we've we put them in our newsletter and tried to get people involved.
Oh, okay. So have we had EBC event
Oh,
for
event?
Albany?
Oh, I thought you were
I mean,
talking about the
educational.
community advisory committee.
No, not the Community Advisory Committee. This is a kind of a outreach support group that you can join to promote East Bay community energy. I'll send you the information on it. I got an email, and you can go through a little online training. Talks about the information that you try to get across, and then they promote events in certain communities to get people more educated and knowledgeable about East Bay community energy. Did you go through that too?
Go through it, but I thought it came from you.
It's possible. I guess
I- All I'm thinking is we've maybe I'm being a bit paranoid, but it might along the idea of getting as much information and enthusiasm out. It might be good if they're able to help us organize an event, get them on board, organize an event at community center, make it known in an e-blast, and try to keep people happy rather than waiting for them just to be unhappy. I don't know.
Maybe there's no issue.
Yeah, could be.
If the people aren't paying anything different. And they, it's like, that's perfect.
And the default is brilliant 100 and
So
up.
Right. That was-
Yeah, well,
unless, of course, this change to the committee structure would negate that, but unless we wanted to do some kind of a promotion, outreach to the community to get people to do the 100% renewable.
yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
point.
it's like an
Well, so I'll.
Totally be within our purview, even with the new title.
No, because it's
Totally climate
advisory,
action.
not, that specifically doesn't talk about outreach or anything like that.
Well, but, I mean, the topic,
Yeah.
this is a climate action topic.
Well, it's a key factor in our climate action plan is moving with the
So, I
CAA.
mean, that could be something we organize, but I don't know if people would come to something just for that.
Yeah, well, and I like your point. I think we should wait and see. If you start getting more communications, or East Bay community says, "Wow, we're getting like 100 requests from Albany citizens saying, 'Take me off this.'" Can we get that kind of information from them? When you're in communication with them.
So the hope is that starting next year, we can provide regular updates on both opt-out and opt-up rates. We don't have
Okay.
those yet, but starting in February, we'll get monthly updates from them that then we can share with you. If we have enough opt-outs, I assume we will. For commercial, we don't even have enough opt-outs to know, which is really good news. They won't give us that information because of privacy reasons. So, yeah, so we can provide that information. And I think our biggest campaign now is getting people to opt up. And I don't know that requires an event necessarily, but
Yeah.
certainly we could help get the
Well,
word out.
I think Tom had a good point. So hey, it worked. Everybody seems happy. We're not gonna, if we start seeing a lot of opting out, then maybe or very little opting up, then it'd be important to partner with EBCE and have a community event focused on that. Okay, sounds good.
I haven't gotten have you gotten anything that says you can opt up? I
Yeah.
got nothing from EBCE, but
You didn't get our postcard from the city?
It probably, it was right in the middle of all the political hoo-ha.
Postcard from the
I
city
got
was
it. I
supposed to
still have
be
it.
during it, and it actually was after the political stuff because
Yeah.
the Oakland Mail House held it for a week.
Yeah, and I got mine, so I saw that. Yeah, so I think we just wait and see. Sounds good. Okay, any other comments on that particular, the East Bay Community Energy? Okay. Information regarding biannual advisory body appointee process. Oh, that's what we were just talking about, right?
Yeah, so I've sent you a couple messages. The last one was that they can start making appointments sooner than we thought. So everyone needs to reapply, and some of you already done that. Thank you. Besides Samantha, you're good. And do it as soon as possible so that you can be in that pool of applicants. I don't know. I'm confused. I was told yesterday that that there's no deadline, but that council can start making appointments starting December 11th. But then the notice actually went out today, so it may be as soon as today. That's what I'm confused by. Do you know?
The Matty, they cannot make appointments until the Matty Act period runs its course.
Apparently, Craig said that that's not the case when you have all the
Oh.
everything vacant.
Okay, so we're not sure.
Yeah, we're getting conflicting information.
The deadline is open, so if you're slow to submit an application and there's someone else who does, that's not on the committee today, and your council member says, well, gee, we haven't heard from so-and-so, I'm gonna just appoint this other person, you could be out of luck.
It's probably not likely, but it's possible.
It's possible.
Well, again,
Better be safe.
I think a good idea is contact your city council, let them know you're interested in being on the committee again, and read through what Jeff has sent out and ask them, you know, if you want to, ask them about this change in committee focus. Maybe it means you're not interested in being on a technical advisory committee for the climate action plan. But anyway, I think either way, sounds like in the next week would be something to take action on. People should do that in the next week. Oh, okay.
I also have a quick other update. Greenhouse gas inventory. PG&E continues to fail miserably to provide the data we need to adequately understand our electricity and natural gas usage for commercial customers. But PlaceWorks has completed their inventory tool, and we are going to learn how to use it next week. We hope that in January we can give you a tiny sneak peek at sort of a broad brush of what the 2017 data was, and then perhaps in February or March we can look at it a little bit more in detail.
Okay. Okay, fine. Great, thank you. So, no other comments on that? Let's go into presentations. 5.1. Yeah, this is the waste reduction initiatives.
We have two presentations.
Can you turn off the light system?
Okay, so hello. That's okay. So our first presentation will be on waste initiatives in Albany, both past, present, and potentially future. So we'll start by talking a little bit about plastic. Right now, there's an estimated 6.3 billion tons of plastic on Earth. And that's a problem because it doesn't decompose like organic materials do. And most plastic pollution in the world and in the Bay Area especially is single-use food packaging items. So Clean Water Action is a nonprofit that did a study, I think it was last year, and they found that food and beverage packaging make up 75% of litter in the Bay Area, which then washes down the storm drain into our oceans, which is a problem for ocean plastic pollution, and then also having so much plastic is a problem from an emissions perspective because it's made out of petroleum and natural gas. So it is something we should take action on. The state has already started. They have a plastic bag ban, and also in 2018, Governor Brown signed a law that straws are now only available upon request in commercial food establishments. So it's not an official, like, full straw ban, but if you want a straw, you will have to ask for it.
That's in place in California. Everyone's, because I seem to automatically get straws all the time.
Yes, it has not gone into effect yet.
Oh, okay.
Plastics are also a problem because we are seeing that there's recently been a shift in the recyclables market. So certain countries that we relied on to take our plastics, we shipped our plastics abroad and then they were handled over there, but a lot of countries are now saying they no longer want to take our plastics, which is a problem in California because we export about a third of our recyclables every year. So this is scary, but also it's a really great opportunity for us to think about focusing on education and outreach so that we can change consumer habits, both to decrease consumption and then also learn how to be really great recyclers so that we're not contaminating the streams.
I had a question. Do you know what percentage of recyclables plastic make up?
I do not know that.
Okay.
I don't know if you know.
Probably less than paper, and I think paper is a pretty huge amount.
I'm not sure. But the good news is that in Albany, we're off to a good start. We have one of the highest waste diversion rates. We have a higher waste diversion rate than California, which is at 65%, and the United States, which is at just about a third. We potentially have one of the highest waste diversion rates in Alameda County. So we're already doing well, and any improvement we make will be even better.
Sorry, can you, so what's a waste diversion rate, or what's waste diversion?
Waste not going into the landfill. So,
Measuring the solid waste versus recycle and compost.
So we send only 16% of solid waste to landfill.
Sorry, did you say 16%? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said 60. And I was, yes.
16.
16%, yes.
Wow. And that's using waste management, getting the figures from, because waste management handles our solid waste, right?
Yes, the figures actually come from Stop Waste. They've actually, this is a couple years old, because they've stopped doing diversion rates. They stopped measuring this way, but we see it as a really helpful way to share how much waste is going to landfill. But yes.
Wow, that sounds excellent. I mean, it's hard to improve on 84%. I mean, you can notice it. I mean, you get up to 95. I don't say you get better than that. Okay, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
no, that's okay. So in Albany, we have some waste policies already in effect. There's a polystyrene ban and foodware ordinance, which was adopted in 2008. And it prohibits polystyrene food containers and also requires food service facilities to use eco-friendly foodware that is either biodegradable, compostable, or recyclable. And then Alameda County, so Stop Waste is the Alameda County Waste Management Authority.
How do you enforce that?
The polystyrene ban is complaint-based. But I haven't received a complaint about polystyrene in probably 5 years. But we originally there was a lot of polystyrene used.
And then so in Alameda County, there are two policies which Albany played a large role in creating, and then also we were early adopters of both. There's the reusable bag ordinance and the expansion, which required, starting in 2013, that grocery stores and food vendors in the county are banned from providing single-use plastic bags. And then in 2016, that ban was expanded to all retail stores and restaurants. And then also there's a mandatory recycling and organics ordinance. Starting in 2012, certain readily recyclable materials were no longer allowed to be disposed of, and businesses and multifamily properties with more than 5 units must have on-site composting and recycling. Composting and recycling. So waste came up in our CAP 1.0 because based on the greenhouse gas inventory that the city did, we found that waste accounted for 5% of emissions. So in CAP 1.0, waste reduction strategies including increasing the diversion rate, as we saw in the previous slide, and also educating residents to become well-informed consumers, recyclers, and composters. Waste will also be a portion of our CAP 2.0, in the proposal from Cascadia, they mentioned that they want to address short-lived climate pollutants, such as methane, which come from organics, and then also address emissions that come from consumption, both from consumer habits and then also waste once you're done consuming the goods. So they like to focus on principles such as the circular economy, which is basically like using and reusing and getting the most out of a good before you put it into waste, and then also just reducing consumption so that you don't even get things in circulation to begin with. And I saw a little blurb in their proposal too that they want to look at promoting voluntary actions to reduce waste.
So the consumption-based emissions, those aren't really in that. That brings up a big issue in the circular economy. Those kind of emissions aren't really tracked in what we were monitoring. But they're recognizing that and saying within the waste stream, there are you can reach out and reduce just consumption-based emissions. Okay. That seems like it might be a whole separate category rather than under waste. Are they doing that?
You're asking if consumption is a whole separate category?
Well, right. And,
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but a lot of the strategies are going to end up being waste-related strategies. That's sort of what we learned from our CAP subcommittee conversation. But
A state policy that, again, was signed by Governor Brown is SB 1338. It's a pretty progressive policy. Oh, sorry, it was in 2016 that Governor Brown signed it. But it's a law that aims to cut back short-lived climate pollutants such as methane. Cal Recycle is probably going to take a heavy hand on this, even though local cities and counties will be responsible for implementation, enforcement, and funding. But basically what the law aims to do is have a 50% reduction in disposal of organic waste by 2020, which will mean that instead of putting food scraps or uneaten food into the compost, we'll try to find ways to get it to people who can eat it. A 75% reduction by 2025. And then what I kind of just mentioned, by 2025, 20% of edible food that's right now being put into the compost will be recovered for human consumption. It's a pretty beefy statute, so don't.
Big companies like that I work for have to comply with that. Any company that has a cafeteria.
Yeah.
So, based on all this, how can we do more in Albany? So, here are a few local policy ideas that I found by doing research on what other Bay Area cities and counties are doing. I'm not going to go too much into it, just in the interest of time. And I also will say today I went to a workshop in Foster City about reusable foodware and learned a lot, but I didn't make it back in time in order to really factor it into this presentation. But some of the potential policies or policies that are being enacted in other cities right now are, of course, the very popular straw ban, which definitely has pros, but is also a little bit controversial for a couple reasons. Putting cigarette butt receptacles in public, because cigarette butts have a little plastic filter within them. So when people throw their cigarette butt out their car window and it goes into the storm drain, that plastic is going down the storm drain. Also an interesting note about that, when I mentioned earlier that Clean Water Action did a study to see what plastic pollution was in most in the Bay Area, they did not count cigarette butts just because they did not have the capacity to do it because they were so many. So that's potentially the biggest source of plastic pollution in the Bay Area. The reusable foodware only for dining in is something I learned a lot more about today. Cities want to get rid of disposable foodware in dine-in restaurants because if you're there, it makes sense to not throw away what you used to eat after if there's capacity to wash it. Having takeout foodware be only recyclable or compostable according to waste management authorities within the jurisdiction, because it doesn't all, it's not all the same. There would be charges on takeout equipment like cups and clamshells, banning disposable stirrers, straws, and utensils, or having them only upon request, and then expanding mandatory recycling or composting. So this can be something that we discuss more in depth later, but I think in the interest of time, I'm gonna move to the next slide. So again, we talked a lot about this today at the workshop that I went to, but the last couple months I've been working on doing a zero waste event guide for the city of Albany, which I'm also hoping to maybe adapt as a zero waste restaurant guide. This is what I had prior to today, and I have a feeling I'll be doing a lot more work on it now. But I think the most important thing to take away from this and keep in mind is that outreach and education are probably our biggest opportunities to make change, because if we can get people to stop consuming as much, we won't have as much waste that we need to stress out about. And also focus on our upstream recycling and composting habits so that when people do recycle something, it's not contaminating other things in their bin, which would prevent it from ultimately being recycled or composted. For more information, if you're interested in doing a little bit of homework on your own, I like to check out every now and then National Geographic's running list of action on plastic pollution. They have a really cool document where every few days or weeks as it comes up, they'll update this article with different action that's happening around the world to address the plastic pollution problem. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Any comments, folks? Yeah, one thing, I know sometimes within the cap, the waste on the emissions is really small, but I think the main thing is to get the plastics out. And the more we can do to just eliminate plastics entirely, the better. It's amazing how much they turn up. Over Thanksgiving, I was in the Bahamas, which I'd never been to before, and you go on a pristine beach and there's plastic stuff all over the place. It's really horrible. So I would say if we can do things to address the plastic, even if you get more little, I see a lot of places turning to organic, like bamboo stirrers and wood stirrers, and yeah, that generates a lot of junk, but if it goes into landfill, it's organic and it'll deteriorate anyway. So,
Well, I think the key with that is if you can find things that are actually organic and don't contain chemicals and can be composted, that's probably better. Because if it goes to the landfill, one of the things they were talking about today is it's still a volume issue. So you're still sending tons of stuff. So it's always...
Just to clarify, the items in the landfill actually really don't break down because it's sort of anaerobic digestion. So it creates methane, but it doesn't actually really break down. They found newspapers from 100 years ago in landfills.
but it's better than plastic in the ocean.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on that? Let's go on to the next. Climate Mitigation Adaptation Plan survey results.
Yes. So I'll be talking about the survey results from the survey that we had open during the month of October, and just some of the basic analysis of those results that we looked into. So just generally, we had 344 responses, which was pretty exciting. Of those respondents, 91% live in Albany, 18% work in Albany, and 62% own property in Albany. And there were also, people were able to list what groups and city organizations they were affiliated with, and I don't remember the numbers on those, but I know we had upwards of like 20 different groups that people listed, so I feel like it was exciting that we got such a great and diverse pool of respondents. We asked respondents to indicate what they felt their understanding of climate change was, and as you can see, over 90% of people feel that they are somewhat to very informed about climate change issues, and 9% feel that they are professionals in the field or closely involved with the issue. Less than 1% said they don't really know much about climate change, but when you put that in perspective, that's only 3 people, which out of 344, I think is a great
They're
opportunity. That's not that many people that we need to teach. So we had 2 questions which asked people how they thought the city should prioritize mitigation efforts and prioritize adaptation efforts, and then in this graph I put them side by side. So you can see that for both mitigation and adaptation, respondents believe that they were a medium to high priority. And they're very similar as far as you can see, medium and high, and it looks like generally people believe that both adaptation and mitigation are very high priorities. For other community priorities, we asked people whether they disagree or agree with the following statements, as you can see on the board. And what I take away from this slide, you can see the dark bar on each bar is strongly agree with the statements. And I think from this we can say that respondents generally agree with climate action planning. They agree that we have a role in preparing for climate change and mitigating climate change, and also failure to plan will have negative consequences. We also asked people to rank their priorities, rank topics to keep in mind when creating a climate action plan update, and this is these are the results. Public health is at the top and urban beautification is at the bottom. So this just gives us a sense of not only what people prioritize, but also maybe how we can talk about climate action planning in terms of co-benefits.
If I may just kind of jump in here, I thought this was a particularly interesting outcome of the survey, and I, at least for myself, wouldn't have expected public health to be number 1. Not to say I don't think it's a bad outcome by any means, but it's not an issue that I hear about in my other roles with the city. So just interesting. We hear a lot about housing affordability, but that came in 5th. A little bit surprised by that. So just.
The period that the survey was up was just October?
October 5th through 31st.
You said also,
Yeah, it was pre-fires.
It's pretty fire.
So, I mean, we had fires and smoke impacts last year, but it was pre-fire.
and you said 67% own property.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the large level of people, 63 was it? 60, anyway, it seems like that might be minimal from, say, renters. So I was kind of surprised to see housing down that far too. Anyway, I'm wondering if again, this was a survey that was kind of put out, and then you have people that will actually get interested and respond to the survey versus those who, what kind of sample are we getting? Are they the people that are very social, very environmentally aware, happen to own property, aren't that concerned about housing? And how representative are they of sort of the overall mix of people in Albany?
Do you have the data?
Data as far as
So
like,
what percent said public health
yeah.
versus that? I think that'd be interesting.
That would be-
Slide like this.
yeah.
I do remember off the top of my head that public health we asked them to rank on a scale of 1 to 7, and when you got the weighted average, it was a 5.26 for public health, which means that it was, I forget what the percentage was, what people ranked it as their number one priority, but it was over a third. Yeah.
That's pretty consistent with the climate reality training. You know, the whole strategy of the presenting climate change and climate reality is tapping into people's interest in public health and environmental. Those are the two big things. You know, you get an emotional response from people with one of those two things. So yeah, it's very consistent.
Mm-hmm. And one more thing for this slide, I will say that although it wasn't open while the fires were going on, it was open while the IPCC report came out, and a couple people mentioned that. So we asked respondents to prioritize or to tell us from most important to least important how they wanted the city and individuals in Albany to prioritize climate actions. And we see that for both individuals and the city, respondents felt that transportation and buildings and energy use were by far the biggest topics or the most important topics to prioritize in climate action planning. And food and agriculture was very far at the bottom. Not very far at the bottom, but at the bottom. I also think it's interesting that all these are pretty correlated, so it's not like people felt that solid waste was a high priority for the city, but a low priority for individuals. So I thought that was interesting.
So I'm sorry, could you just go back? What was the last one on that? It was food. And so what does consumption mean? That's kind of weird.
Individual consumption. Yeah, I can pull up exactly what we asked. Consumption, including emissions associated with goods and services consumed within the city.
Oh, okay. So this is sort of seeing people's awareness about circular economy and that, and kind of entrained energy sort of thing. Yeah, okay.
We asked respondents to tell us if they agreed or disagreed with statements about what the City of Albany's role should be in climate action planning. And as you can see from this, the actions in which the city provides, promotes, facilitates, and engages get the highest rankings, and enforce, require, and tax get the lowest ranking, although it is interesting to note that even those ones down at the bottom get a ranking above a 3.0, which means that they're neutral, somewhat neutral, or neutral to somewhat agree, because there are a few scores that are pulling them up a little bit higher, but there also were some people that very strongly disagreed with those things, so you kind of have to look at the...
Still require green infrastructures.
Well,
Yeah, that's require. It was sort of like require the city to do green infrastructure, so it's a little different.
oh, so sorry, I should have mentioned this. These questions you can see are about emissions reductions activities. This slide is about adaptation activities. So again, we asked respondents to tell us if they agreed or disagreed with statements about what the City of Albany's role should be. And again, the require adaptation efforts, and sorry, I forgot to get the other one in there too. Oh, well, that was because it was, okay, sorry. Requiring adaptation efforts for private property is the one that got the lowest score with a neutral. But the other require for requiring adaptation measures in new development got a somewhat agree. So we got it above that. It's above the neutral mark, but still you notice that it's at the bottom as well.
Nobody likes regulations and being told what to do. So
No.
it usually equals spending money. So
We asked respondents to tell us how concerned they were about the following local effects of climate change and water scarcity and fire and smoke related health risks were at the top for both. And we were talking about it yesterday, and what's interesting about that is those are the two that people have been exposed to recently, drought and last year's fires.
You know what's interesting is heat-related health risks are way down there.
Yeah.
I bet you that changes in a few years. Huh, that's interesting.
Heat issues here, so.
We'll start. Consider climate change.
So then we got a lot of really great written comments. I think we had 3 questions that had an other section in which people could write in responses, and then also we had the open-ended question at the end that asked if anyone had any concerns or innovative suggestions for things we could do. And the most common topic that came up was solar. People are really stoked about solar. They want more solar subsidies and incentives. They want technical assistance. They want to know how to get solar, how to install solar, and they also want to see more solar around the city. Solar covered parking lots was a big one that came up. So solar was a big interest. The second was electric vehicles. People want to see more EV infrastructure and also more EV adoption in the city. They're also interested in solar EV chargers. Another topic is green infrastructure, and it came up both as an adaptation measure and a mitigation measure because people said that it works both as carbon sequestration and also as shade to help with heat. Respondents also indicated that they want more opportunities for active transportation or more promotion of active transportation, and then also better access to transit, which maybe isn't super feasible, but is good to know that people want to be taking more transit. They also want to learn more about what they can do to minimize their impact, and also how they can, install different green technologies like solar on their own homes, so they can be a bigger part of mitigation. It came up a couple times talking about changing media messaging, which I don't know how much control we have over, but they want to see the media talk about climate change more instead of just natural disasters. And I guess that also ties into outreach, where maybe we could tell them more about what they can do as far as climate change goes. And then a concern, although it didn't show up in the ranking of priorities, a significant number of people talked about how they want us to keep in mind that a lot of people who are living here are already maxed out and so can't necessarily be told that they need to install something for hundreds of dollars, because then they could no longer afford to live here. So those are a few common themes that came up in the written comments. I was also very excited about the written comments because a lot of them were very, very positive. There was only one person who told me that we did not need to worry about climate change in Albany. But there were hundreds of written comments, and a lot of them were great ideas, and so I think that's a good indication that people are excited, which is one of the main takeaways. There's general support for climate action planning. Also, respondents, it looks like, view adaptation and mitigation both as important strategies, or both as important things to include in our climate action plan. They support promoting versus regulating and enforcing. So they want to have more voluntary actions than enforcement. And I think the biggest takeaway is that people are concerned, but also they want to be engaged. We got over 90 emails listed as people who want to stay involved with the Albany climate action planning process. So hopefully when we email them about our workshop in February or in January, they will all show up.
Yeah, it's great to hear.
So I think this is a good opportunity. Thank you.
Nice, thanks.
Thanks. Okay. Anybody have any comments on that? Thank you very much. That's a lot of information, and I'm glad we got as many respondents as we did. Anybody else have any thoughts or comments on that? I like that we.
Let me
Go
just,
ahead.
this is going into the climate action plan. I think this goes to the Cascadia, right? This is,
Yeah, we sent
Is that thing,
Cascadia.
right?
They have all the data,
Yeah.
and then I can also send them this. But yeah.
What percent were done on smartphones versus on computers?
No, I've not seen any way to. We did it on SurveyMonkey. I don't know if that's something they collect. I'm not sure.
Yeah, again, it would be interesting to know what demographically, I think with 67% being property owners, that's pretty high. We're sort of 50% renters, so I think we're getting sort of self-selection going on there, where maybe people that aren't as technically savvy maybe didn't respond. So, but I mean, I think we did our best way of doing it, short of sending people out randomly to interview people in a random distribution. That would have been way more expensive. I like that I didn't realize that there was opportunity for people to remain contacted. That was excellent. I think I remember that from the survey, and it seemed, I could see a lot of people saying, no, don't contact me, I don't want to be bugged. So it's good a lot of people did, and I think that'll really help us get the word out, and I would hope we would get at least a third of them here. Yeah. So good work. Is there anything we as the Sustainability Committee members should be doing to provide information back to the consultant or to you to take to the consultant? Should we, I think what I see in this is a lot of what we had already determined, the focus on transportation, the focus on building energy and energy usage. There weren't a huge amount of surprises there, actually. It kind of went along the lines I thought it was going to go. As much as we got some information we can analyze out of it. Anybody else have comments on that? Or so I think we're headed down. We're doing good. Great. Okay. Anything more on that, or I think we can move on. We're getting up to 9:00. 6.1.
All right, so there was a memo from Cascadia attached to your agenda. Just briefly, kind of an update on what's gone on in the past month and a half or so. So we did the survey. Cascadia provided an outline of emissions sources and a couple activities that the CAP subcommittee did. We met with the CAP subcommittee twice, Lizzie and I did, and Eric can give a little bit of an update about that later. It's on the agenda. Not to put you on the spot, but or we all can. Let's see what else. We reviewed survey results, and then we worked with the subcommittee on strategy development. And then in terms of next steps, well, actually, we've been working on staff interviews with some key staff members, both about kind of implementation successes and challenges from this past CAP, and also what they see to the future. It's our transportation planner, myself, Jeff, our public works director, and our city manager. And we've actually provided, we offered if anyone else on staff is interested in having an interview, but haven't heard back. And then we'll do additional interviews once the mitigation measures are drafted. Then we'll focus, we'll bring land use strategies to our planner and that kind of thing. So we'll do more interviews the second round. Let's see. And Cascadia has been working on initial development of mitigation and adaptation measures. And they're going to do more of that early next year. And they've also worked with us on kind of updating our community engagement strategy. So you've heard us allude to this a couple times. The Sustainability Committee meeting in January on the 16th is actually going to be a public workshop open house. And the hope is it's very important to us that all the committee members can be at a workshop. So we thought it was better to just do it at your regular meetings. It's very difficult to find a time when everyone's available. And we're going to invite the public, but then ask committee members to play a special role in sort of guiding the public at different stations. And we're thinking about breaking it up by emissions sources. That worked really well for the CAP subcommittee conversation. So we're looking at some of the biggest sources, the things that are the most difficult for us to tackle. And the hope is to both generate really creative ideas, get the community feeling really invested in the plan, like it's a community plan, and then also giving them an opportunity to provide feedback on the things that the ideas they generated, so that they could kind of hold themselves accountable. If an idea is really exciting but maybe not feasible, we want that feedback from them too. And so the idea is we'd look at gasoline powered vehicles, natural gas in buildings, as energy use in buildings, consumption, and then adaptation. And for adaptation, we'd look at several climate threats that seem like a really big deal in Albany, like wildfire smoke impacts or heat impacts or things like that. And we may look back at those survey results to see what the community is concerned about too. So that's kind of the model of the workshop, and our hope is that committee members will stand at each station and help guide people in conversations.
So this all sounds good, but it's a month away. So what are our opportunities to have interim coordination events, or is it just that you'll give us little flyers and do this and we'll just come in cold and just do it cold?
I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure that you need a lot of prompting, because I think you guys are all pretty aware of the climate action plan and the issues. So I'm not sure my sense was that you didn't need much. But certainly if there's some information that you need before the workshop, we'll provide that to you, a week or two beforehand. But staff will prepare the details of the workshop, and we'll facilitate the workshop, and we'll provide a presentation at the beginning to kind of orient people.
Yeah, I think speaking for myself, what would be helpful for me is if staff in Cascadia, and I don't know if the CAP subcommittee can be involved too, would put together sort of an outline of what the meeting will be like, if there are different stations, what the focus is, questions, and, that there's a pack that gets distributed.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of have that already, but we're working through the details, but we'd be happy to share that with you beforehand.
And that gets shared with the committee members. The other thing would be we should check now. I mean, Max hasn't shown up. Stephanie, I know she has a very impacted schedule. And Robert, how much do we know everyone's going to attend? This is the question. So if we're banking on having at least 6 people there and only 4 show up, that's going to be a big hit. So have we gotten people to commit to being?
I can send out an email about availability. Off the top of your heads, are you all available on January 16th?
Yeah, I think so.
And Stephanie isn't teaching on January 16th. That's her conflict currently. Next year is supposed to be better, so.
Yeah. Okay. I just have us down for, So, but I think having a packet that goes to everybody well ahead of time, so we know what they're doing, would be helpful for me. And then if I have any questions, they can all be directed back to you, and then answers would go out. But it's very exciting. I like this idea. I wish I had a little bit more time to pull it together. But
I think it's going to be pretty straightforward. But yeah, we'd be happy. We can share the packet a couple weeks in advance and make sure we have time to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then the other thing, really good to hear about, that you have a bunch of emails that you can send to people to invite them to this. We should probably schedule people up as early, give them the notice as early as possible. Can we get this coming out the next few e-blasts, just have it be a thing that's in there, hey, come to this, thing, so it goes out to that larger emailing. I think that'd be good.
We were gonna, I think what we had talked about is we're sending, we don't want people to forget about it. So our outreach strategy is to send an email to the people who signed up through the survey, and we'll copy sustainability too. Some key city staff and our CERT list actually,
that
because
would be
we
good.
did a
Yeah.
presentation to them recently, and sort of made a plug for the CAP adaptation piece for them to be a part of that conversation. So that's a big email list that we have. So we're going to send it to them in a couple weeks within Evite, so they'll get updated reminders if they RSVP. And then we said starting in early January we do a big push on social media.
Yeah, okay.
But we could do an e-news blast.
Yeah,
Before
the
Christmas,
one
too.
that tells what I've noticed is when I see that come in my email, I tend to look at it and sort of scan through the various things. And I think people in Albany, there are probably quite a few people in Albany that just kind of do that.
Yeah.
And so if it pops up on there and has a good eye-catching thing, I think it's in, like I say, these reports just came out, people are thinking about this. We had those big fires. I think we can get a good turnout. It'd be nice to get, especially we're going to break up into groups. If we have 18 people and you break up to 3 people each, it's sort of be better to have, the whole place filled. Great.
You might have to, if you get a big response, you might need to do it with the committees.
Yeah, that's one reason why we wanted to get RSVPs. We think our vision is we could have a couple stations in this room and then open the doors and talk about adaptation in the lobby so we have more space. But certainly if we get a lot of response, we'll talk about moving it.
Yeah, well, this time of the evening that isn't too bustling around here, so we could.
Yeah, right. Maybe if we change your name.
Call you the school board.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so that's another thing.
That's
We
right.
know we're not conflicting with other events.
January 16th, you mean?
16th, yeah. All of a
we-
sudden, it's like the budget meeting for.
Those on Tuesdays
school?
generally.
It is okay.
Fridays, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the January 16th, this is the Sustainability Committee's regular meeting, and we try not to schedule 2 meetings at the same time. So
Yeah.
that's your standing meeting, so it's yours, and if someone else has a meeting at the same time, they did something wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
And then for just quickly, if you're interested in kind of knowing the timeline for the next 6 months or so, we're doing that in January, and then we're doing some key stakeholder engagement in February. This actually came out of the CAP subcommittee conversation. We decided we need to engage landlords in particular. And so we're going to have a specific meeting with landlords. And then also we'll engage the business community and Albany strollers and rollers. So we'll do those key stakeholder meetings in February. Cascadia is going to sort of evaluate strategies based on all the information we've given them and narrow down a list that they can bring to the Sustainability Committee for review. And also,
Was there was it other community groups or just strollers and rollers?
we had identified for now landlords, Albany strollers and rollers, and business associations as the 3 key groups that we should engage early on in the process. If there's others that you think are key that we're missing, let us know. We can also always invite people to the workshop or to committee meetings where you review it, but those seem like the ones with a lot of stake.
There's some community groups that are affiliated with ACAC that, it's not all strollers and rollers.
Yeah, if you think that that's important to sit down and have a conversation with them separate from the regular public meetings, let us know.
Okay. Well, thank you. That sounds great.
Just a couple more things. Sorry, we'll bring strategies to you and possibly to other committees and commissions for review. Then they'll do an implementation strategy, and we're hoping that like June, July timeframe, sustainability would, approve adoption, recommend adoption of a final plan that we'd bring to council. But this timeline is actually a little unrealistic, so we may end up moving into September for that adoption. But our goal is July.
I should probably know this from the plan, but is part of the plan for Cascadia to give us a draft so that we can review and
Yes.
give comments? Okay.
Yes, so Cascadia has a bunch of iterations. They're looking at co-benefits and feasibility and financing. And in that process, there will be a list of strategies that's brought to sustainability to really review. Some of that will be done at the CAP subcommittee level, just because you have to kind of get into the details outside of a public meeting. And so maybe the CAP subcommittee would then bring a recommendation that the committee as a whole could discuss.
Good.
So there'll be several iterations.
Okay, so one question, so at some point, they'll bring a draft version. Will there be them actually presenting to the Sustainability Committee?
Yes. Yeah, so we're
That's
thinking,
final draft, right?
we haven't talked about when it makes sense for Cascadia to come and present. I think the draft, presenting the first draft might be a really good time for
Yeah.
them to come. We are going to have a staff member from Cascadia there for the workshop. And that way they like really get a sense of the community. And then, yeah, they'll come to at least one meeting to give a presentation to you.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking and maybe that needs to be at a point after we've all sort of reviewed the first rough draft. If there's a final draft, it might be good to have that again, sort of invite the public and then have Cascadia present it and have as many people in the audience, maybe those who participated in this coming workshop. We get a lot of good feedback from
Absolutely.
that. Yeah, okay. And then has this schedule sort of stayed the same?
It's more or less the same. We've just kind of added a lot more detail.
Yeah, okay.
And the workshop, we pushed the workshop up to be more of an opportunity for the public to generate ideas rather than just giving them mitigation strategies for them to rate.
Good. Great. Any other comments on this from anyone?
Will the workshop be focused only on CMAP, or will this also be talking about the Community Climate Solutions web platform as well?
Oh yes, thank you. That's a great transition. But yes, we're actually planning to cross promote. So we're planning. Well, I'll let Lizzie talk about the launch. But yes, we'll talk about Community Climate Solutions at the workshop. Actually, both at the beginning and the end, and we may even at the end ask people to get out their phones and sign up. So.
Boy, that was just such a great segue, but actually we have the CAP planning subcommittee next. Maybe we should push that off and go.
I thought we have update on Community Climate Solutions next.
No, we
Oh, we do. Okay.
Well, why don't we flip them?
We can flip 'em.
Yeah, let's just go to 6.3. We'll come back to 6.2.
Okay, so we've been working on getting Community Climate Solutions up and running. So right now, don't pay attention to the link. That's not what it's going to be. We bought our domain, so it's going to be Carbon Free Albany. It's going to be carbonfreealbany.org, but right now that just takes you to our general website because we want to get everything else in place before we link the URL to the site. You can see here our logo, Carbon Free Albany. And then we've started putting in, we were given room to do put 4 photos in that are Albany specific. So we have one here of a man and his kids doing some active transportation with some nature in there too. The second photo on our main page are some kids doing an art project with the recycling symbol using recycled materials. Also, sorry, our tagline. Something we learned, we were a little bit concerned about having the white text over the photos with the fogs. It's a little bit hard to see, but one thing we learned is that, so I'm not good with computers, but they have a climate fellow who explained it to us, and it's called wrap text. So depending on the screen that you're using to view the site, the text will be different, so you can't really fix that unless you put a big gray bar behind the text, and then it kind of blocks out the photos. So it is something we just kind of have to live with. I think it sounds like they're a little bit limited in what they can customize on their end. That is something I can ask though.
Picture.
So our tagline is join the carbon-free Albany challenge to reduce your impact, save money, build community resilience, and create a safer and healthier future. Our goal is to have 250 households participating by Earth Day in 2019 and 100 tons of carbon reduced by Earth Day 2019. So our second customizable page is the Why Join page. And it says, join us to help protect Albany's climate for future generations. And we have this photo of
Why is
some
Albany
kids going
so
to Marin.
foggy?
Yeah,
That's foggy.
Foggy, then you could read
At
it.
least it's not hot.
Smoky, actually.
That's what it is.
it's fog.
No, these are fog.
Natural, it's very natural.
Yeah,
I also recently learned that,
that's Albany.
yeah,
It's sort of faded out. It would be great if it wasn't faded out.
and then our third customizable page
Ah, that's
is
No fog.
no fog.
September.
Some actions take an urban village. Find out how you can get involved in community-wide sustainability projects below. And this is where we can populate, we can put in the sustainability committee events, as well as our CAP 2.0 community workshop, which people won't really see before they show up because we're going to have them sign up while they're here, but at least it's on there. And then sustainability committee meetings, and then any rec department events, like the crop swaps, toy swap next year would be on there.
Can we put ACAC meetings on there too? Or can it only be official city events?
We'll double check, but
It'd be nice to do that and rollers and strollers and all of those. Yeah.
There might be another opportunity. I'm not sure, but I think that there's a page for community groups that we can.
And for links.
We can have community groups sign up, and then on the main page they will show up as top community groups or top teams. And then I don't actually know much about what happens there, but I'm guessing you can maybe click on them, or
Yeah.
at least.
Well, having if there's specific activities that those groups are doing, it'd be nice to publicize them on this. Like if, ACAC's putting together some kind of main thing on solar, rooftop solar, it'd be nice to have it in there.
I think they can communicate with other members on this platform. I'm not sure if we can officially put their events because it looks like their city events.
yeah, and it creates it's a free speech issue. So if everybody gets to post
Oh, okay. Well, it's
potentially offensive or counterproductive groups could be would have an equal right to post their event. So that's why we're a little touchy about it sometimes.
Oh, okay. Well, it'd be nice to investigate that a little. I mean, if the whole theme of this is for, carbon reduction, you can have like a pro-Nazi group saying they wanted to come and have their event there because there's nothing to do with it.
But as Claire said,
Remove the fog from the pictures, is that
We
possible?
spent a lot of time looking at pictures.
Did you?
a couple hours. One thing we also noticed from looking at Fremont, San Leandro, Palo Alto, all the other cities that have sites up and running is they kind of have the same issue. I know San Leandro's, we were viewing it on one of our screens and you can't even see the tagline because
We didn't
it's...
even know it was
Yeah, we didn't even know they had a tagline unless you highlighted it and it showed up in blue. So it's something that... It's not perfect, but at least we're getting people to the site.
We've talked about shortening the taglines too. Perhaps that might, but I think we think the photo is maybe more catching than the tagline anyway.
The one thing is that I think reduce your impact, I understand what it's saying, but if you look at it with just those 3 words, it's a little bit misleading. I understand that it's saying like impact in a negative way, but
It's like reduce your footprint, minimize your
Yeah.
footprint,
Yeah,
reduce your emissions.
for your carbon impact.
Okay, we'll play with it.
And yeah, we've talked about also just shortening it to something like join the Carbon Free Albany challenge to create a safer and healthier future. And that would at least be a little easier to read.
So then, when you go to join the challenge, does it give? Do you have an opportunity to give more information about what Albany Climate Action Plan, that kind of thing? Are there links to that? Or
Well-
it just moves into how to.
How to do it. But if you do go, and we're still plugging things in, but I think the idea is on the community action page, you have the calendar, and then you can also put like, I don't know if blog posts are the right word, but you can put like articles,
Or links and things.
links, and then for any kind of specific resources, like for example the SunShares program, that would come up when you go to the actions page, go onto the specific action that you're looking for, and then that's where we put in
Oh, I see.
links to resources. Like I'm just starting to work on this, but I've got the SunShares program in for install solar. And that's where you can click on those and get some more specific information about what opportunities there
So
are in
going
the
back
city.
to those actions, could you actually have? Again, I was thinking of this also being a way to put out, as this original idea of a portal, put out like one of those could be Albany's Climate Action Plan, and you could just get the background information of what goals are and all that, or is it not? It's not used to put information out that way.
No, I think these are,
These are actual actions.
yeah, and they show up on every single city's.
customizable.
But we could write a blog about our new climate action plan or something,
Yeah.
and then link to it.
Yeah, I don't, it seems if people get pulled into this site, it might be nice if they could also get the information that we have available on how we're doing, what was going on and everything, but maybe it doesn't work that way, that's okay. I think the more important thing is get them to start looking at how they can change their actions, which is what it's very good at doing. Well, that's exciting, great.
Why are we telling people to switch to CMS?
That's all these actions are just general actions that are on every single. It's like a part of the site. It's not the customizable part.
But I think we asked Lisa about that, and she said they're changing it.
That particular one,
Yeah.
she acknowledged that needed to be updated.
Yeah, and they're constantly updating. They've got a long list of things to work on, but they are updating things.
So
We can ask her if that can be done by January 16th, though.
So when they do updates, does it roll into this, so ours will automatically,
yeah.
okay, great, that's good.
Part of the way that makes this cost effective for us is that there's a template behind it that all the cities are using.
Yeah.
So sometimes it gets a little complicated because we can't customize much. So we have 100% carbon-free electricity, so we kind of just have to put a note in that says opt up, but maybe
Yeah.
harder to give people credit.
Yeah.
Are the challenges themselves customizable? Like, could we have a challenge to say like checking it off, like that you opted up? Because I know there's like a challenge portion, or is that specific to the actions that are taken?
I think the whole thing is the whole thing the challenge.
Yeah.
Another page there was like
Was it?
there it says challenge leaderboard. I don't know it.
Yeah.
And I think that's just
All of it.
I think it's just leaders who did the most actions or have made the most impact.
Got it.
Yeah.
So that'll.
We're calling
fill
it.
up Once people start.
Right.
And we'll we'll kind of preview this with some folks, so it's on day one, there's actually already a few people and teams that are already starting to roll, so people don't come in look and think it's blank and it doesn't work or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be our guinea
So
pigs.
you'll be in here before day one,
Yeah,
hopefully.
okay. Yeah, well, if it's so at some point, this will be all up and running and we can get in and start putting our information in, okay. Huh. And you find it easy to work with? I mean,
What? Sorry, I didn't.
are you finding it isn't a time sink to work with this?
No, it's actually a lot of fun. I've run it. I'm like I said, I'm not a group. I don't understand computers. Not like computers, but you know,
Not
like
a programmer.
internet. Yeah, I'm not a computer programmer, but so there's a couple things that I like don't always understand. Like when we were trying to talk about the text, I didn't understand why they couldn't just put a bunch of spaces to break it up. But it's pretty straightforward to set up, and I think it should be pretty straightforward for people to use.
Okay, great. So goal is to get 200, did that goal come from the vendor? Or
We made it up.
You made it up. Okay.
We looked at other cities' goals and where they actually were, and then we decided to do something realistic.
Okay.
And we're opening it up to the public on January 19th, but our goals are set for April 2019, so maybe we can have an Earth Day push, because like Claire just mentioned, when we were looking at a couple other city sites and they had a goal of like 1,000 households and they had 300, it just kind of looks like a little bit of a bummer.
Yeah. What Lisa has suggested is you can bump up your goal incrementally and not make it a big deal, and then just sort of it's more for show, I guess.
So when will this actually be live and people can start putting it in? What was that date again?
Well, we're officially launching at the workshop on January 16th, but it'll be live before then. We haven't talked about what our live date will be to get people like you, and we're going to work with some community groups to get them in early, perhaps early January. I mean, we're almost there. Really, we just need to add in some more of the events and the resources.
So part of our next meeting, in addition to being this workshop for CAP 2.0, will be an announcement of this and maybe a little demo and showing it, but for limited time. Was that
Very short, but yes.
And then maybe we have, if there's some, easy instructional information or something.
You were gonna have flyers actually
Flyers.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay.
on the table
great.
by the door. Then maybe before we start, we can kind of like get people to try to sign up before we even start our
Right.
presentation.
Okay, anything more on this? It's great. I mean, this happened very quickly, so thank you. But please take out the fog. It'll read. Okay. Now we can go to 6.2, CAP Planning Subcommittee update. Was I supposed to ask for extension of time at 9?
No, we go till 9:30.
Oh, 9:30, that's right, okay. Good, we got plenty of time.
So the CAP subcommittee has met with Lizzie and myself a couple times since your last meeting. We had really good conversations. Eric, do you want me to put you on the spot to share, or do you want us to share?
If you wanna,
Put him on.
wait.
Nick wants me to put you on the spot.
Yeah, that's fine.
I wanna hear
So,
from Eric.
yeah, we had 2 really good workshop sessions. Lizzie did a great job of organizing us and getting us going, and we used the Cascadia template as the emissions categories. And our first step was to identify barriers and threats, meaning things that would inhibit people from being able to do certain types of action against emissions. I think I'm not maybe doing that justice, but and so we went through and identified, and we prioritized what we thought was the high priority things first. Transportation, building, energy use. Got into air transportation. That was interesting, and some of it was really good sources of places to look at actions. And we got so into it that we decided that we really wanted to take the next step and talk about solutions. And so that was our second meeting, was to really dive in and take those same categories and start talking about solutions. And it was really great because it was all in the context of us knowing Albany and the Albany community and the Albany resources and the Albany situation as far as, you know, socio-political, economic climate here. So it was really good to be able to kind of customize that at the grassroots level of, you know, in our committee, knowing that that was going to be fed back up into Cascadia.
Yeah, we thought it was really fun. I felt like ideas were generated that are things that we hadn't thought about on the staff level before. And we're kind of hoping to take that sort of same model and momentum for the community workshop.
Will those barriers and solutions be compiled so that everyone in the committee is able to see them, or?
We can send those. Yeah, we have notes that we shared with
Yeah.
with Cascadia that we can send.
Yeah, okay, that was my thing. So all this information went back to Cascadia, and that's providing climate action plan subcommittee's input to Cascadia. Okay, well, that's good. Yeah, I know, I mean, we've spent a lot of time, especially since mulling over the BETO, you know, just what is the most bang for the buck approach. So that's good. Well, thank you guys for doing that.
Yeah. And again, it was nice to feel like we had input not just in the categories, but in the Albany perspective. So really getting it personalized.
In terms of sharing the notes, just so you know, we're going to modify them slightly, just because there's a couple things that we didn't want to make public. Just, you know, discussions about politics, etc. So so we may just like modify them slightly, but they'll still have the same feel.
It'd be kind of good to share that so we could see
Yeah.
a little bit more
Yeah.
on the detail. I mean, that was kind of a high level passover, but I'm very happy to hear that your guys' expertise is mulling these things over and we're getting that information directly to Cascadia. Because we did spend a lot of time on it. Anything more to bring up on that? Okay. Are you and you
It was
guys?
Max, Stephanie, me, and Claire and Lizzie. So it was, you know, really good.
Great. And then, are you planning to? Is there continued kind of activity going on with that, or?
There will be continued discussion. It was in the Cascadia brief, I think, about sort of other ways to use the CAP subcommittee in the future, but I think it will be after the workshop and more looking at starting to vet those mitigation strategies and think about implementation in Albany too.
Okay.
But
Great.
again, the meeting with the landlords was an outcome
Yeah.
of that. That was really interesting. You know, we kind of got on this theme of, like, you know, because such a high percentage of the residents are renters, that how to engage and you know, work with the landlord community.
Right, because I mean, as a barrier, it could be something that we could work with and try to do some convincing or some incentives there
Yeah, exactly.
to allow them to do that.
Knowing what their incentives, what their issues, what their interests are.
Yeah, okay, great. I had another thing I just thought of, but it left. Okay, so we're done with that? Can we move on to, let's see, now we've got our outreach. So I do have a little handout. Pass that, I think. Oh, man. Send it on down to, listen, I gave you one.
Yeah, I can, if you need more, I can just,
Hold on.
are there enough? I can give up mine, I have a
Yeah,
digital copy I can share.
You can share? Okay, yeah, I think I had 6 of them. But I can share it. Here, send this on down to,
Yeah,
We
I
have
can
enough.
pull it up on mine.
you sure? Okay.
Right.
So, did you want to present
I can
this?
take the lead on this.
Sure, okay.
So we met again on November 14th and we kind of went over in general our priorities. I know we got feedback before to kind of narrow it down a little bit. And the main thing that we focused on is talking about the carbon-free Albany and how we want to support that. And then also the CAP 2.0 process and how to increase community engagement with that. And lastly, this broader idea of having the sustainability committee be more present in other events that kind of are related to what we do and but being there and really having more recognition for what we're doing, and so there's more understanding in the community. And so now moving into specifically carbon-free Albany, we talked about our main goals are being maximum enrollment in the first place, and then focusing on how to continue engagement actively and frequently, and making sure that people are continuing to check the site on whatever seems reasonable, but that there's still ongoing action after just enrolling at the first point. And so what we were thinking for strategies for this is possibly reaching out to San Leandro and Fremont to kind of learn more about what was successful for them. And then also continuing to partner with community groups, schools especially, and then also as well CERT. I think that I personally started brainstorming some ideas with the schools and how we could start working with them. I think Earth Team could definitely participate in being like the group to start earlier, and also, talking to the AP Environmental Science class and making this like a homework assignment basically. So I think that's a really great way that we can kind of get a diverse range of people engaged, and also kind of you can make it mandatory when it's students. So that's a plus.
We think we may develop like stickers or some sort of prize for
Yeah.
people too, if that's appealing
I
to
think
the
that
high
would
school
be fun
students.
too. Yeah, I think there's definitely ways to engage them and kind of figuring that out. And so I've started talking with Earth Team a little bit and brainstorming it. And I think also this can go in conjunction. This is a newer idea, but we're working on it in the schools to create a kind of week of sustainability leading up to Earth Day. And so we could even include signing up for Carbon Free Albany as being one of the steps, and then that fits the goal because Friday it's 250, and so we're creating plans for each day, having some sort of activity and kind of making that our end and adding that in. So I think this really works well together. And then also utilizing social media. I know eBlast we've discussed. I always find Nextdoor really helpful, and I know that I always see Claire's messages on there, and those are big things for me. And then I thought Albany Patch as well. And again, working with community and neighborhood groups, and like I was just saying, to enroll right after launch. And then the last thing that we discussed that I think we're slowly moving away from, but I think continues to come up, is the idea of a large city-sponsored sustainability event. And so there was a suggestion to make a motion to request City Council to direct staff to put on a larger sustainability-themed event on a regular basis, but after discussing more with city staff and kind of getting a better understanding of the full context, I think at least the conclusion that I've made is that it's really not feasible right now, and it's not worth focusing on that when there's other things that we can do with more targeted goals. And so I think really what we're kind of focusing on now is what we can move past that and what we can do instead, and really targeting our actions on the community's climate solutions.
Yeah. So, yeah, and just to talk a bit more about that, we had met a little earlier when we're putting together an agenda, and I think we can run these discussions around. But I think staff has done a good job of vetting this again and again with various. Jeff's gone before. He's talked to Parks and Recs, and he's talked to council people, and he's talked with city manager. And there's really a huge disinterest, or not a desire to support what was used to be, like the Arts and Greens type large festival. I think part of the reason is there just isn't city resources to support doing that kind of activity. But I'll let staff kind of talk about it. Anyway, if we want to put it to a motion and vote on it, or talk about it some more. We've got we'll probably go over 5 minutes, but the idea is let's finalize it and get it out. And I think we've been beating this one for a while, and it hasn't made much headway. So anyway, I don't know, Tom, this is kind of your pet project. Is there any concerns you have, or?
Well, it's not my pet project, first of all.
Well, I didn't mean that in a derogatory. I just mean it's something you have a lot of passion about. So.
Yeah, my feeling is that the city council should be able to direct staff to put on an event. I mean, the Park and Recs puts on all kinds of different things. So if it's something that council decides they want to do, let it be a recommendation from us, and let them decide whether to do it or not. Because I think it's appropriate for council to take to decide whether to do something like this or not, and direct staff. And just because staff doesn't think it's a good idea, doesn't mean the city council may disagree with staff. Right? Because the city council can set priorities for these kinds of things. City council could say, we no longer think it's appropriate to have a 4th of July celebration. We want to have some other celebration. That's perfectly within city council authority, no?
I'm sorry, I really don't know how the city council interacts with the Parks and Recreation Department on establishing on projects or events. But nothing has changed on the direction that I've been given.
Right, but that's from staff. My point is not, we're not asking staff to do anything. We're asking council to express whether they think this is a good idea. Bring it to council. That was my point on this. I mean, you guys don't think it's a good idea. Obviously, Park and Rec doesn't think it's a good idea. Let the council just, make a statement whether they want to do it or not. Let them vote on it. What I'm suggesting is that we pass a motion to recommend to council that they take it up.
And we set up the agenda, so if the committee wants
Yeah.
to do that, you're welcome to do that this evening. It's on the agenda. I can only tell you the direction I get, which is it's not something that the city manager is interested in pursuing, and I believe that that's based on the feedback that she gets from her individual conversations with council members over time. So I can't promise. I don't know what the outcome of the presenting this to the city council will be, but if that's what we need to do in order to bring some closure to this, I'd like to bring some closure to it.
Yeah, I mean, let council vote, to say yes or no whether they want to do that. I think it's a reasonable request from the Sustainability Committee, if the majority agrees, that we recommend council take some action. They can decide whatever form it is. But, my feeling is that there should be some kind of event that the city does that's focused on sustainability, like a lot of cities put on Earth Day celebrations. And I imagine, when Berkeley decided to do that, they had a council recommendation or staff recommendation that they voted on to have an annual event.
We have an Earth Day celebration every year, and I don't believe that it was ever a council request, but we do it.
There is an Earth Day event.
Yeah, we have an Earth. It's our coastal cleanup or Earth Day coastal cleanup every year in April.
Well, that's different than coastal cleanup. I'm talking about actual.
Yeah, so I'll weigh in a little bit. So my take on this, having sort of seen staff go through a lot and understanding your point of view, the take I'm kind of getting on this is resources are really limited. The city does certain events that happen through Parks and Rec that seem to be focused more on community activities. They will have themes that touch on sustainability, but doing a big event is taxing for them, and they're not interested in doing that. That's sort of the feedback I've gotten. And they, just like they won't do a dog themed event, or they won't do a patriotism themed event. I mean, they'll have some smaller events during the summer that may touch on similar things, but a big organized event that has to have, participants that you register and do all that is just a big burden. That's the sense I'm kind of getting.
So let me ask you this.
Well, I didn't get to
You're
finish what I
doing
was saying.
A cap thing, which is taking us 2 years to do, and telling the city it's a priority, but it's not and we talk about outreach. To me, this is one of the ways that you connect to people on a variety of levels that, where you reach them. So I mean.
Yeah, I understand your.
It's a part of the cap that we do outreach.
And I think we would need to do more focused outreach. Having a just generic sustainability event, I don't think that's focused enough, in my personal opinion. I also see the city unwilling to put resources towards just a big events. You know, unless they're sponsored, or, you know, it's like the film festival is really put on by the people who do the film festival. City puts in a little bit to that, but to just tell, anyway, the sense and the pushback I'm getting, and I hear Jeff talk, and when I talk to others, is that there isn't really support for that. We can certainly request it. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. Just like, I mean, you've gone and talked directly to the city manager. You've done all sorts of work towards this. The city isn't budging on it. So I think it's a waste of your effort. I think it's a waste of all our effort. It isn't going to happen. If we want something like that to happen, then we do it through something like ACAC and have them organize it, and it gets, you know, sponsors and rolls through that way. But the city seems to be extremely disinterested in doing it.
I think it's also hard to argue that the city isn't already sponsoring sustainable events. I mean, there's bike around town, and there's coastal cleanup events, and the toy swap, which was just mentioned, and crop swap. And so I think that rather than focusing on creating a new event that in all likelihood would just be as equally attended as already ongoing events, that we should, you know, put more emphasis on what's already happening and increasing attendance there, and then potentially in the future saying that we've shown that there's clear community interest. Maybe we can move on from that in the future, but at this point it just doesn't seem like it's worth our efforts.
Yeah, I kind of, well, and again, I mean, I guess I should go sit down with the city manager and get a total explanation of how events are done in the city, but it seems like, well, all events are done by Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec does these set events that, you know, they're funded, it's all divided up. They don't want to take on another event. I don't know, that's sort of my interpretation. No one has directly said that to me, but I certainly don't see anyone going, yeah, this is a great idea, bring it on, let's do it. We could test it out. We can put a motion forward, you know, to recommend to the city council that, you know, you can phrase it however you want. I think it'll probably, well, anyway, we can just do it. It can move on to city council, and we'll see how they respond. But that would be the end of it here. I mean, I think we kicked it around quite a bit and brought it through in very different avenues. And I mean, I see staff going out and hitting walls with it. So I don't know. You know, I think we can put our energies towards focus items and achieve more than just a generic big event. In fact, I think having an event that specifically highlights the rollout of this community, carbon-free Albany, and getting people involved in that would be a really good event to focus on through ACAC. But again, I mean, the city's putting, it sounds like, and especially getting this change in our whole committee, they're putting the resources towards the climate action plan and getting people on board for that, and not something just sort of broad, non-focused, I guess.
To add to Samantha's comments, I think we can do, and I want to try to do better at working to build into some of these other events some of the sustainability themes, and we haven't done that at this point, really. We haven't made a strong push in 2018 to do that, and the city, and Nicole has certainly committed to us that she supports us doing that with the recreation department staff, and so it will be experimental, but I'm willing to put our energy into that. So, different events might be different ways of doing that, but we will work with Shelley and her staff to figure out where we can appropriately fit in, so that we do accomplish the outreach objectives and ultimately change behavior. Outreach is one thing, but to do it effectively so that we're changing behaviors and generating enthusiasm for the policies and programs that you really want to see adopted in the city.
Well, yeah, I wish I had more detail and insight into it, but it's just that's the sense I've been getting. I mean, we've kind of discussed this quite at length. But anyway, if someone wants to make a motion around it and we can vote on it and put it before the council and see if they're interested in taking it up and finding resources to do it and putting it on Parks and Rec's agenda, I might go there. I'm not optimistic. Anybody else have comments on that? Did you want to make the motion, or?
Doesn't sound like there's support for it.
Yeah. I mean, I would really, I think there's ways to channel energy into things that, and I guess what I'm saying, I think this may be part of behind the, the focus more on the cap and everything, is that it'd be nice to expend our energies in very focused, targeted events, workshops specifically to getting onto carbon-free Albany, and
We're not talking about something that the sustainability would put on. We're talking about something that a department would put on.
yeah, but there's no the only department out there that puts things on is Park and Rec, and they have no bandwidth to do that. But I guess you could say, well, they are putting on all these other little events throughout the year, and they run the rec program, and they need to drag funds from that so that they can have and sponsor this other event that would be a sustainability event. The response we've kind of gotten that is they put on sustainability events. I guess they do. They're not a big, lots of participants, held in a hall where you try to get the whole town to show up, I guess. But I think they have, the only take I have on it is that they just have limited resources. They're directing them a certain way. And I don't know if council is going to be interested in telling them they need to direct them in a different manner. Have we talked, have you gone and talked to Parks and Recs, and what did they say?
Oh, I haven't talked to Park and Recs for a long time.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
My only point is that Park and Recs doesn't want to do that. They don't want to put on an event. They don't want to put on something that, whether it's similar or different than the Old Arts and Green Festival, they don't want to put on an event. So the point I was trying to make was that if council, if we thought it was a good idea, that there should be an event that it's not just focused on sustainability. The old ones were old, it was a year or two ago, were a combination of two different things to draw the community in. That they could direct Park and Rec to say that we believe this is important, and that there be a way to draw the community into something where they can learn about the different types of things that we're talking about, from sustainability, from a sustainability perspective.
yeah, I get where you're driving at. I guess the problem is they haven't seen that very successful in the past. The last one wasn't as well attended for the effort they put in. I'm speaking from what I've heard transferred to me, and there are better ways to direct city resources. And I think it's a great idea, but I don't think we have the resources to really fully pull it together, get the participants, publicize it enough to have it be effective. I don't think past Arts and Greens has really promoted much sustainable action in the city. It's been a nice event, feel-good event, people go to it. I don't think vendors got a lot of business out of it. It's one of those events that it's just sort of broad and general, and there's an interest more in doing targeted, specific kind of energy, I guess. That's my interpretation of it. I don't know, other than going and talking specific, I think each, you know, you talk to Parks and Recs, they have their own thing, and you can talk to city council. I recommend, you were appointed by,
Pete Moss.
Pete, talk to Pete, you know, and get his take on it. What did he say?
Send a resolution to council.
Oh, okay.
I told you that.
Oh.
We talked about that at our meeting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I see a lot of pushback on it, and I think the energy's good. Yeah, okay. Well, I think it's good we bring it all up and we talk about it because it's been cycling around. But
So maybe to end the meeting on a little bit more of a positive note, we already have a meeting scheduled for the 12th, and so hopefully we'll all meet again and kind of discuss what our plans are really for the launch. And then I know that I'll be active with the Earth team and working with the schools, and then probably coordinating with staff and kind of figuring out how we want to pair those together.
so, which was one thing I wanted. So, the school, and this would be mainly the high school, right, is receptive to having student involvement. Is that something that can be vetted on does that need to go through certain channels to?
Not quite. I'm in school leadership, so I can get that passed pretty quickly.
Oh.
And then, I mean, yeah, things are a little bit easier in high school. So there really aren't a lot of challenges. It's just students being willing. But I think if you force them to do it, and I mean, reach out to teachers, I think that it's also, if we want to look at more than just the high school, reaching out to PTA, PTSA at the elementary schools, and I know they're pretty active there, and there's some community groups that have been created for the elementary schools. So I think that's definitely an option, and I think the middle school still has an Earth team, so they could even do it.
Yeah.
I think it's really a great way to kind of reach out pretty quickly.
Would it make sense for the outreach team to have a meeting with student or put forward the idea, hey, we can sit down and explain this and what the goals are and what we've been up to?
It's possible that would be helpful. I think, if we kind of pursue this idea of having a week in April following not following Earth Day, but leading up to Earth Day, we're planning on having like a lunchtime event that would be kind of a brief presentation and kind of reaching out to students. So if we pursue that, it would be interesting if, people would be able to attend and kind of present. The goal was, the idea is we're going to have specific actions that everyone can take each day, and then the last day is focusing on it's Earth Day, let's celebrate, but here's what you can do for the rest of the year. So I think that would be a good time if you were interested.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for everybody on the subcommittee, but it seems like it would be good to make some connections with the school groups and this idea of rolling out, like I think it was Fremont did. Was it Fremont or was it San Leandro?
Yeah.
Well, one of them did it more like through the high school directly, and that was a way to get to the parents and get people logged in. Yeah.
I know San Leandro did a lot of work with the schools, but you mentioned earlier reaching out to them because I know they did come across some significant difficulties. So maybe if you do talk to the climate fellow who's there right now, her name is Oceane, and she knows a lot about what the fellows last year did, and maybe just get some lessons learned and best practices.
They maybe didn't have a Samantha, so that's probably their issue.
Well, I think, it's a good way to get it out to the community. The school is a good, high concentration of a lot of people who live in Albany, in the school that I think are interested in helping out with this. So
Definitely.
if you, I didn't want to put you on the spot as being just doing all the work,
Yeah,
I'm
it's
sure
the
we can
fastest way to
help.
get things done. Yeah, no.
Well, but if there's, a brainstorming session of how to bring student involvement to this, I'm more than happy to help,
Yeah.
and I think our subcommittee would.
In addition to your workshop, there's a pretty good chance that we'll have an opportunity to do this at a city council meeting. As part of a council meeting, maybe not go into a long detailed discussion, but at least show a demonstration of how to sign up and the kinds of
Right.
things that it would do. Probably in one of the January meetings.
Yeah. Also, when are we supposed to, our work plan? When does that get updated?
Is it a new work plan?
It's it's gonna be a new work plan. You'd probably start to work on that in February.
Okay,
Once everybody gets reappointed and you're settled in with your new, assuming it's the same, but it's, you know, the new committee membership is established, then that's a good time to do it.
okay, so it isn't like city council's waiting for a report starting in January or something, so February.
No, but they'll give us a deadline of probably March or April or something, and sometimes committees need a little bit more time. It's okay. They usually take on one or two a city council meeting. So if you need a little bit more time, that's fine.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, anything more?
I was just thinking it's gonna be hard to do that because a lot of your work plan will be dependent on what the new cap is, so you might have to do an amendment at some point.
And it also touches on whether this shift in the, you know, what city council is saying, well, no, we don't want a sustainability committee. We want this cap-focused technical advisory committee. Then that becomes very simple.
We have a lot of people volunteering to be on the committee.
Well, hopefully.
The other thing to maybe tune in on is, I believe, I'm kind of guessing at the date, but I think January 7th, the city council is having they do their own strategic plan work session, and I think they're planning to do that on January 7th. And that may take them more than one meeting also, but that tends to be the place where they give us direction about what's important to them over the next couple of years, and that will inform your work plan as well, quite possibly.
So is that something we should plan on attending, or does staff bring that back to us and say, here's what city council has been saying?
It tends
Probably
to
we
be
should
more of
talk
a retreat format. It's really intended to get them
okay.
talking among themselves. It's always going to be a public meeting. They'll always take public comment, but it's more to get them to communicate as a group about what they want to accomplish.
We could provide an update for you when we bring the work plan in February to let you know what those changes are if we know yet.
Yeah, yeah. So things are kind of up in the air, I guess, until we get solidified on they've made their appointments. But I think anyway, I encourage everyone here to contact your person who appointed you and discuss. You know, you can even touch on, you know, what are their priorities and concerns, and ask them about this new title for this committee. I think that would be a good thing to run through. Okay, well, I kind of went over there, sorry. I didn't ask to go over. So I can close out outreach. We're all done? Okay. Future agenda items, do we want to say anything there?
I have strategic plan update, and work plan and discussion of amended committee purpose. They may be the same agenda item or they may be separate. TBD.
Just get your thoughts on this. Our normal agenda is kind of suspended next time. It'll probably be a whole day workshop. So anything we're talking about here is probably going to be on the February. Okay. Any other agenda items? I think that's probably it until we get past name change and what that means and everything. Okay. Well, with that, next meeting is our 16th, and I look forward to this packet. I'll feel more comfortable about what I'm doing. And could you confirm who we'll all be able to make it? You know, like Stephanie and Max too. and
Yeah,
Robert?
yeah. I'll send a message to
Yeah. Okay.
the rest of them. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. So, meeting adjourned. Oh, I didn't ask for public, but anyway, there's no public. Okay. Thank you, everyone.